Joe Biden, as you can see in the front row, is all slated to attend a worship service at this cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, also commonly known as St. Matthew's. He's accompanied with a bipartisan group of members of Congress and other politicians in attendance.
Lord, have mercy. Lord Jesus, you heal the wounds of sin and division.
As you can see, Joe Biden's accompanied by the incoming First Lady Jill Biden, along with other Democrats. Nancy Pelosi also present, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, along with, as you can see, more towards the left, there's Kamala Harris in the first row as well, as she'll be sworn in as the Vice-President-Elect in some time from now. All this taking place at St. Matthew's Church. The decision to have this worship service at the church is sort of a break from tradition. It's hardly unprecedented for incoming presidents to attend a service on the day of the inauguration, even though their choice of the church is something different. It could be the Cross Lafayette Square, even the St. John's Episcopal Church. But Joe Biden has chosen St. Matthew the Apostle, or the St. Matthew's Church. And this is the seat of the Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Wilton Gregory, the first African-American cardinal, which is why St. Matthew's is, of course, a break away from tradition. This also goes on to highlight the sort of emphasis that the Biden administration has been placing on the need for diversity in everything that they choose to do, from the administration, the cabinet that has been chosen, to even the choice of the church. Today is St. Matthew's, which, as I've just mentioned to you, is the seat of the Archbishop of Washington, Wilton Gregory, who's the first African-American cardinal. For more details, let's quickly go across to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's reporting live at this moment. Susan, we've just seen Donald Trump departing for Florida. What do you make of his last remarks? And we'll, of course, in just a bit be talking about St. Matthew's, which is bustling with life and as it prepares to host the worship service.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Donald Trump did give his farewell and final, possibly, address as U.S. President at Joint Base Andrews. In what resembled one of his rallies, there were a crowd of supporters in front of him. His family and friends were sitting on the right, and there were military officials on the left side of him. Donald Trump talked about his accomplishments in very Donald Trump manner. He sort of didn't shy away about some of the progress that he had made, and in a sense, some might consider that final speech to be a little out of touch with reality, considering the fact that he was talking about the COVID virus in past terms tense, so to say. He said that, we had a virus and we took care of this virus. Well, this is something that's still ongoing here in the United States. So, that sort of was a flashback for people who were criticizing him about his response to the coronavirus. It's yet to be seen how the Biden administration will address such a big challenge. It has set up some lofty goals and set the bar very high to try to address the coronavirus, but that's yet to be seen how this administration will tackle that. Another thing that Donald Trump said, which was interesting, was have a good life and we'll see you again in some form, indicating that he doesn't have a plan to sort of depart and disappear in the shadows post presidency here in the United States, despite what happens to him politically and legally. So those are perhaps some of the issues that we can take away, but as Trump does always, he talked about his accomplishments, sort of didn't point anything to the inauguration, which was, understandable on his part. But he also said that we brought down your taxes, and I hope that after me they don't bring up your taxes. But if they do, I told you so. So it was a very, very Donald Trump speech. He was true to himself and his character, whatever you decide to think about him. And he left. He left. And in just a few hours, he's not going to be president of the United States.
Right. Very narcissistic, I'll say, that speech was. But Susan, I'm going to come back to you in just a bit. For now, let me also quickly go across to strategic affairs analyst Mr. Dave Ramaswamy, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you so much for joining our broadcast today. Now, just ahead of his departure, Donald Trump held a departure ceremony that was, of course, skipped by Mike Pence. How telling is the gesture of Mike Pence skipping this ceremony?
Well, I want to say Kamala Devi ki jo and wish the Biden administration good luck in the future. I wouldn't read too much into Vice President Pence skipping the ceremony. I think he's torn between being VP for President Trump as well as, representing some symbol of Democratic continuity. So he feels attending the Biden inauguration would be more important. So I won't read too much into that. But I think going forward, as you correctly said, like the challenges to America are absolutely immense. In the wake of coronavirus, which has affected the economy deeply, and for the last 9 months or so, there's been huge economic loss and financial loss in people's lives. And going forward, it'd be very important to unify the country. And it's actually very nice that Vice-President-Elect Kamala Harris, as well as President-elect Joe Biden, they have set the right tone in terms of unity. But some of their supporters still want to perpetuate the election, and right. I think that's kind of being petty. So going forward, I think, and I'll be very honest, this coronavirus has affected many countries very badly, and the death certificate of the fatalities from coronavirus don't have a political party affiliation, right, or any religious affiliation, because sickness affects all humans equally. So I think going forward, it's very important to set the positive tone. And one thing President Trump did, which has been acknowledged on both sides of the aisle, is his Operation Warp Speed, which generated huge private sector initiative to deploy a vaccine within 9 months, which most people thought was impossible. So I think that's one positive message, or like a big positive move in the last 9 months. And hopefully that results in a greater opening up of the economy.
Right. Dave, Joe Biden is taking office at a time when America is highly polarized, something that you just mentioned. What are the challenges ahead for the Biden administration as far as the lack of diversity in the United States is concerned?
Well, the challenges, like I said before, are mostly economic, but the economic challenges are very closely tied to the health challenges. And truth be told, there's a huge lack of trust, and not just in political parties themselves. It's a lack of trust in institutions, and as you know, like in India, America, many democratic countries, there exists what I call the permanent class, an ABC complex, academia, bureaucrats, and corporate complex, which sits outside of the political sphere, which is unelected, which is kind of unaccountable, and persists across administrations. So in the case of the coronavirus pandemic, one thing which has been exposed to large numbers of people is for example, politicians who have instituted harsh lockdowns, multi-month lockdowns recommended by some bureaucrats. None of these people personally have suffered any loss of income or health benefits, while the parties at the receiving end, like the average working person who has not had the luxury of working from home or working remotely, has suffered between 50 to 100% loss of income, and that's created this huge resentment or polarization. It's accelerated the polarization. It's the whole concept of skin in the game, which means if you're instituting or recommending a policy, you should be bearing some of the risk and bearing some of the loss if things go wrong. So when people see the average working class person who's not really political, all they want is to put food on the table, help their family, pay rent and maybe have some extra savings. When they see that they have to bear the majority of the burden or loss, and then people recommending a policy don't, they're justifiably upset. And that's what we're seeing. So going forward, one of the challenges I see for the next administration is to rebuild trust in broad sections of the economy. And the way to do that, of course, is to open the economy up responsibly, but also, help people financially. Like over the last 9 months, there have been 2 relief bills passed in the U.S. Congress. And the last relief bill only gave about $600 after 9 months to the average working person, while countries like Sudan got $700 million and Pakistan got like $25 million for some gender assistance program. So when people see this, they're justifiably think,
right.
They're getting a raw deal.
Right. Dave, I'm going to expand further as far as the lack of trust is concerned. That's something that Joe Biden's administration is, of course, trying to regain by, coming up with a more diverse sort of cabinet. And we'll talk more about that. In the meantime, let me quickly go back to Susan for all the latest that's happening right now. As we can see, there's a church service which is on at St. Matthew's Church. Susan, Biden's inauguration will look very different to years past. The question I'd like to ask you is how different, of course, will be this inauguration?
I mean, a historic inauguration indeed. We have to remember that it's happening in the backdrop of a deadly virus, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has taken 400,000 American lives. And considering how the election process was, election season was with a lot of mail-in ballots and absent ballotees, it just started off as a sort of different election season and inauguration day ultimately as well. What's interesting is there's been a lot of changes. Joe Biden already, because of the pandemic, wanted his ceremony to be subdued, so there won't be that many people at the inauguration ceremony, about 1,000 who are invited guests. No public tickets have been sold like previous years, but the Biden administration again and the inaugural committee came out and sort of put flags instead of the 200,000 or so people who would naturally gather at the National Mall. So they're trying to make it as normal as possible, but there's no denying that with virtual ceremonies and virtual events, which is the new normal after the coronavirus pandemic, it's nothing like years past. And I think that's where they sort of break from tradition. As you know, traditionally, people would gather from the night before, sometimes early hours of the morning on Pennsylvania Avenue, as the new elected president would drive or sometimes get out of the car and walk from the Capitol building to the White House. That's not happening at all, and it'll be different. It's very quiet, but I think the most important thing for America right now, not only this administration, but for Secret Service, the FBI, other security establishments after the events of January 16th, is that there is a peaceful transfer of power, considering that this is truly one of the bedrocks of American democracy, and that is very important to everyone involved and all Americans across the country, that we uphold that promise, so to say, and there is no disruption or violence.
Right. In fact, the peaceful transition has, of course, been challenged severely and heavily during the Donald Trump administration. Let me go back to Dave, who's joining us at the moment for more questions. Dave, as we were talking about having the need for a more diverse cabinet, I'm sure here's a question which many Indians back there in the United States and even in India would like to know of. From Neera Tandon to Vivek Murthy, quite a few Indian Americans are going to be part of Joe Biden's administration. What does that mean for the Indian diaspora and America's relationship with India?
See, I think diversity and inclusion is a very good thing, both in practice and both in theory and in practice. And this kind of echoes Prime Minister Modi's slogan, if you will, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas," because it says in any democracy, the only way you can make progress is by building trust and including large numbers of diverse opinions. And so that's a good thing, and that I think exists across administrations. And the appointment of Indian Americans to his cabinet, which kind of continues what has happened with President Trump as well, is a testament to the success, both economically as well as professionally, of the large Indian American community, who are the children and grandchildren of those who immigrated 50 or more years ago. And so that's a very welcome engagement or development. And that, of course, will further the strong relations that America has had with India. If you know, and as a lot of your viewers recognize, the affinity for India that exists in America transcends political parties and transcends administrations. So you've seen over the last 30 years with every president, the engagement with India getting stronger and tighter. And, the Indian American community has been recognized by both political parties and even those who are not political as contributing a lot and positively to the American economy across diverse sectors, not just technology, information, sciences, or mathematics or engineering, but also in like entertainment, arts. So this is just a testament to the opportunities that the Indian American community has been given, and the appointment of such accomplished individuals is just a way for them to give back to the community that has given so much to them.
Right. And on that note, let me also go across to Susan. Susan, as while we speak, I'm being told that Donald Trump has left a note for the incoming President Joe Biden that Donald Trump has chosen not to attend the inauguration ceremony. What do we make of this gesture of Donald Trump leaving behind a note for the incoming president?
It's not unprecedented. Former presidents have always, or oftentimes, I should say, left a little note for the incoming president, a word of advice, so to say. We remember that George H.W. Bush did that. We know that George W. Bush did that for Barack Obama. We don't know where this note has been left, but usually it's in a drawer in the Oval Office. So actually, in this one case, Donald Trump somewhat kept to tradition, and we'll see if the content of that note is made public or not. But it's usually a conciliatory gesture. It's usually basically saying, good luck, these were my challenges, I hope you don't. It's a lighthearted note. I hope you don't face these challenges, take care, and things like that. So, but we'll see what Donald Trump's note is.
We'll see what Donald Trump has written. That, of course, is the bone of contention as far as this note is concerned. Dave, let me come back to you. Be it a deeper alliance to combat China or even a strong stance against Pakistan-backed terror groups, even India's entry into the nuclear suppliers group, or even if when it comes to, Trump-era curbs on visas to be lifted, where do you see Biden administration's position on these issues, which of course are very, very crucial to the US-India relationship?
Akanksha, I want to echo what Susan said. There's been a historical precedent of, departing presidents not attending the ceremony of their successor. So it's not something new. But going forward, I think you hit upon something very important, which is how do you maintain continuity in policy across administrations while putting your own mark in it? And I think the Biden administration will have to walk a very fine line. One thing which is clear to not just American citizens, but people who love democracy and liberty, what I call the Alliance of Liberty, the Western democracies as well as Asian democracies, is combating and recognizing the threat placed by communist China. Because if you see the history of the pandemic, they've been very cagey about the origins of the virus, about, denying the airborne respiratory spread of the virus, and then later on, kind of guarding and locking down the supply of masks and PPE, which has affected the world economy deeply. So going forward, I think one of the things the Biden administration should think, and this is reflective not just of any individual's opinion, but the opinions of large numbers of Americans, is, calling China to account and recognizing and having them acknowledge the damages that they have caused economically. And there's actually some segments of not just the American population, but even elected leaders across both parties who are saying, some amount of reparations needs to be paid. I mean, the bigger challenge is how you're going to enforce it. But going forward, maintaining the Quad alliance, which has been recognized as a security guarantor for the countries of Asia. So it's like Japan, the United States, India, and Australia, which are all democracies, like having the safe and secure Indo-Pacific. And that's one of the other legacies of the Trump administration, is to set up the Indo-Pacific Command at the Department of Defense, and recognizing that the Indo-Pacific accounts for 90% of the world's energy transit and 80% of the world's container shipments. So having a free and secure Indo-Pacific, it's critical to the world's security. And I think the Biden administration would be well served by having advisors who kind of push forward and maintain this policy.
Right, a safe and secure Indo-Pacific, that is, of course, very, very crucial. And while we speak, we have Joe Biden's tweet coming in. There you have it. It's a new day in America. That's what incoming US President Joe Biden has to say. He will be sworn in as the president. He's still the president-elect, to be precise. So that's his tweet coming out saying it's a new day in America, as Donald Trump, the outgoing president, as we all have just witnessed, departed for Florida from the Andrews base. That's Joe Biden's tweet. He sent it out as just some time ago. Currently, Joe Biden is at the church. He's at St. Matthew the Apostle Church. And before I let Susan and Dave go, Dave, I have one last question for you. A lot of Indians would like to know about America's stance, what it's going to be as far as trade relations are concerned, because the relationship with India, of course, took a major hit on the trade front when Trump decided to withdraw benefits worth $6 billion under the generalized system of preferences. Both sides negotiated for a mini trade deal, but of course they did not sign an agreement back then. What can we expect as far as Joe Biden's position is concerned?
Akanksha, going forward, we got to look at the bigger picture. The Obama administration had put forward and the Trump administration had carried on this notion that India is going to be one of America's major non-NATO allies. And this still exists. This fact is undisputable.
Fair enough.
And the biggest opportunity for U.S. and India going forward, and it's building off of what the Biden-Harris team has put forth, is on climate and energy. I think India and America working together is going to transform the energy security landscape over the next 30 or 40 years. And so the move towards decarbonizing the economy. So not just solar and wind,
right,
but to look at like hydrogen, methanol,
right,
non-carbon fuels. So that's a huge opportunity, which I put in hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right,
so
Dave,
people in India
much.
shouldn't be worried about a few billion here or there. I mean, look at the bigger picture. And it's not just U.S. and India. Africa, 70% of Africa doesn't have sustained
right,
or 24-hour power.
Right, and let me tell you, Dave, that the Indian government and, of course, all Indians are only hoping for and are anticipating a smooth transition. The rest we shall only know once the Biden administration actually takes over. Having said that, thank you so much, Dave Ramaswamy, for joining us from Washington, and another big thank you to Susan Tehrani for bringing us all those latest updates from Capitol Hill.